Perfect. So, hello everyone. Welcome to the talk. We have Loraine here who's speaking about women in tech. As you can see, hopefully you can see the screen and herself. I'll pass it over to her, and we are good to go then. Over to you, Loraine.
Great. Well, welcome. First of all, everyone, thank you for having me at this GirlScript Ireland conference. I'm happy to be here. I'm calling in from Toronto, Canada, so way on the other side of the world, but I'm happy to be here. It's Saturday morning for me here. I wanted to introduce myself, starting off with, can you see this thing on screen? Okay, there we go. I just want to introduce myself. Right now, I work for Microsoft, and I'm an Azure technical trainer at Microsoft, and I've been here a little over 2 years now. And I'm going to talk about my journey. That's part of what I'm here to talk about. I've had a long journey, various paths along the way, but that's what I'm going to talk about here. And being a woman in technology and how that is influenced my journey, and how you as women, if you are a woman, of course, how you can, I guess, stand out in technology. So I wanted to first start off with introducing you as fellow other Canadians, in case you don't know where Canada is or any famous Canadians. Justin Bieber is one of our ones. Drake, one of our guys too. Ryan Reynolds. Rachel McAdams, actually taught her before in the Apple Store. Schitt's Creek, if you watched that on Netflix, a Canadian movie. And there I am on the map. So in case you were trying to find out where I am, I'm right there. Of course, we have the Toronto Raptors, go Raptors, go. And Wayne Gretzky, a fellow Canadian too. So there's lots of famous Canadians. Hopefully I'm one of the Canadians you now recognize. When you see Canada or think of Canada, think of me as well. But we have many, many famous Canadians that are here with us today, or that are famous in Canada. So let me continue on. I'm switching slides there, sorry. So let me start. I started with Microsoft. That's where I currently am. I have a varied background, as I've done very many things, different roles throughout my career so far. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. And I put this quote up because you can't connect the dots by looking forward. Only today, when I turn around and look at where I've come from, it all makes sense. Sometimes for yourself too, when something happens or you change roles, you're like, oh, this doesn't make sense, or this is terrible, whatever happened to me. Look back and you'll see your path connect from the back. And it doesn't make sense right now when I'm saying it, but when I started my role, you'd never ever think I would be where I am today. So that's what I want to tell you. It only makes sense when you look back, and I'm sure you'll find yourself when you did very well in this particular subject or didn't do so well in another subject, that changed your path, and it may have upset you at the time, but when you look back, it all makes sense. So take that as a positive, take that as a strength, and use your strength. And that's part of what I'm telling you. Use the strengths you have, because sometimes it may seem like a roadblock, but something is guiding you to another path or to another way to go. So make sure you use that when you're going forward. Don't fight a lot of things, go along with it. You'll find your path normally will change for the better. So think of that too when you're looking at your path. So I concentrated on my strengths when I was in my different career roles. Took a little bit of, here and there, I moved things around when I needed to, but focus on your strengths, and that's what will guide you, what will change your path going forward. I find technology hard, but other paths are harder. Technology has made things easier for a lot of people in different many roles. In the other paths, I found it much harder to succeed. So technology has made it easier, especially for women, especially for anyone in general. But even starting out, technology has made it easier than other paths I was on before. So I started my path in advertising and design. I have a degree from York University in advertising and design, so totally different from technology. So when you think, oh, wow, how did she even start there? That's what I'm talking about. So some of them, they just start differently. I started in technology, advertising design. I was one of the youngest people in my field, and I knew technology. That was my strength back then. I had the skills, and they were like, oh, I don't know how to do this. Can you show me how to do this? And they'll just give you the computer and give it to you. I was one of actually in Apple's test group of certain products that came to Canada before it came to anywhere in North America. I worked with them in a secret lab in the university, and there was only 10 of us that had access to this. We had software before software had manuals. We had all this, and we created our own courses. We taught ourselves how to use the applications, and we actually created our own courses from that. And that was like a secret lab we had in our university and no one even knew about it. So it was kind of a really neat thing because we played around with the animation back in the day. We did Adobe Director back then as well, before technology was big, but before people even knew this existed. So it starts at a very unusual path. I'm going to say in advertising, I was doing layouts and manual layouts, and advertising was very manual at the time. There was no digital scanning. We did layouts with Letraset, if you remember. We had to pencil in the letters, get photo shoots done, paste them in with like a glue on the boards, take photos of the boards, make film out of it, and then go actually print it. So very manual process. I came at that time when we started to actually automate it. So we started to bring in computers. We brought in photography. We digitally edited photos, which is new at the time of way back then. So it was just being in the right spot at the right time and looking at the opportunities. From your background, from the strengths you have, what can you change what's in front of you and how can you make that influence? How can you put your thumbprint on whatever you see in front of you? And I was known, because I was one of the youngest people there, I was known for knowing that technology, if anyone had any question about technology, they'd come and see me. So, just think of it that way. Just use your strengths. They know you for certain things. Make sure you're the person they come to ask for certain things, and always be that person that that can solve their issues. And I was one of those people. Even when I started my very, very first job at university, I was actually the youngest hire in the company ever. I think I was 21 at the time, and everyone there was 45-ish to 60-ish. They were VPs and directors of companies, and I would sit and train them because I knew the technology. When they went to a conference, I went with them to help them in case they had any technology problems. So that was my strength. I knew the technology. No one else knew it. So they brought me in. I had like 8 interviews because they weren't sure. They've never had someone that young ever in the company work before. So it was a big deal for them. But because I knew how to use computers and everything else, I ended up opening up the entire department and going from there. So use your strengths, be confident in yourself, and know what you like and what you don't like to do. Technology has always been my strength. So I've relied on it a lot in my roles. So I've always turned back to technology because technology can solve so many problems if you know the scope of what's available in technology. So that's why I think it's very important. So advertising was very traditional. So if you think of, I was doing manually budgets to determine how much space on a page the department needed. I had photo shoots. I was working with photographers. I was working with models, retouching artists, makeup artists. I was working with this whole team of people, and this is all very manual. But I started to bring in digital photography, manipulating the photos, retouching photos, redoing the layouts on the computer so we can move them around as needed to. So really changing that way. And my was to get it from actual photographs of the departments right up to the layouts, get my team behind me to I'd pick all the right shots, they'd put them in there, I'd approve all the different poses and all the different retouching work. Then it went right to the film stage where it was going on those massive printers, and then my books were distributed around the world. So my job ended when I signed off on the color was right, the photos were right, the layout was right, everything was there. The copywriters had finished all their work, and I approved all of that, and then it's sent off to film, and it went to print around the world. The magazines are distributed around the world. So that's where I ended. So very different, but technology was in there, and I relied on the technology. That was my strength because I had that strength. So use those strengths, and that's what I'm thinking of, using those strengths. I was in photo shoots all the time. I was traveling different locations. We'd do Christmas back in June, and by June we'd finish all the Christmas books because we had to be 6 months in advance. So it was quite a fun environment to be in, but it was part of the challenge too. You wouldn't think of technology when you think of advertising, but use those strengths for whatever you can. When I went to, so I'm connecting those dots. So what I learned in advertising is the digital transformation, the power of technology in there, and how the power. So I use green screens, changed the backgrounds, substituted in different backgrounds, which they've never done before. So this is way back, but did all these things because I knew the power of technology. I was playing around with it just for fun. And because I was playing around with it, I knew it was possible. So they put a team behind me that do the retouching once I told them what I needed to do, and then they actually do it. So it was kind of neat because I knew that it was available. And a lot of people will say in your day, oh, I don't think that's possible. If you've played around with or you've seen it, you know it's possible. So then follow that and say, yes, I know I can do it. I just give me that project, I'll do it, and go on and do that project. So a lot of them said it wasn't possible, and I showed them new techniques that was possible. So that's digital transformation. For me, that's that first dot on my path, on my career path, starting in advertising. Remember, bringing in my digital technology And that's where it started me on that journey. And that's what made me realize the power of technology and my understanding of technology and where it would take me from there. The next one for me, I worked for Apple as a content developer. So we developed a lot of the curriculum for courses that you see. And Apple actually came to me because they saw some of my other stuff I was doing in the background, and some volunteering work as also that I was doing. So you don't know where the path takes you, but Apple came to me and said, you know, we like what you're doing. We like your layouts. We like, come see what you can do for us. So luckily enough, I didn't have to apply. They came and said, you know, we like how you work. We like your technology background, which other people didn't have at the time in that particular role I was doing. So they came to me and said, I need you to develop curriculum. I need you to develop learning. And Apple sent me for training to their head office in California. And I spent 6 weeks there learning certain technologies and then learning how to simplify. If everyone remembers Apple, they are very simple. And before then, think of any advertising, well, probably before your times, but before then, advertising for technology products, computers, was very complicated. There's paragraphs of technology trying to describe it. Apple made it so simple. It was like, wow, why didn't we think of that before? So Apple really set the bar for simplicity, and they are known for their simplicity. And that's what I learned at Apple. Before then, it was very complicated to talk about computer chips and what sort of CPU you need and what kind of RAM you need. It was very complicated. People didn't understand it. When you saw a Microsoft ad a long time ago compared to an Apple ad, 100% different from each other. So they taught me simplicity and taught me how to write my pieces, write my courses, and then simplify again before it was finally ready. Because before that, it was very, very complicated. If you ask your parents, technology was very complicated. And the ads, if I remember, were very all text with a little bit of picture. Apple's the other way around, huge picture, a little bit of text underneath. And that's what you fall in love with, the simplicity. So simple is very challenging. I studied UX and UI design back then because I know how much I needed it in this role. So I rolled out A/B testing and I simplified and then again simplified until it was perfect. And Apple is very, very keen on making sure it looks perfect. So it changed the way I thought. Apple changed the way I thought. And that's simplicity. I was a content developer for them and they taught me simplicity. So dot number 2 for me is the simplicity of advertising, the simplicity of what you're trying to do, and making sure that you're not over explaining. You're letting the customer think a little bit and making it very simple. Think about the user experience. User experience, I'm going to say, is relatively new term, but it's been around for Apple for decades, as you remember. So we think of it very simply now because of Apple, but before Apple, it wasn't a thing. It wasn't really, it wasn't something people talked about. It wasn't a whole division or a career path, but now it is. So think of it that way. So making technology simple is very, very complicated. Don't overload the users, what you want to make sure you're doing. So if any of you are into design or into UX as well, you want to make sure you're keeping it very simple. After I finished with Apple, I moved into a more of a PC role, I'm going to say, because I became an organizational change manager. So what they do is they go into companies and say, okay, we're rolling out a new system. This is the old system. This is the new system. Who's going to be affected? What needs to be explained and what courses do you need to explain the new process and walk them through that journey. So maybe they're going from so you're going from, say, one basic technology, maybe all manual, you're submitting forms, you're submitting scanned copies of things. How is that changing when we got into Workday? It would be all digital. So I'd show the previous process, take all the steps in between, and then put it all digitally. And then that's what it would be. So explaining the process, finding every division that would be affected as well. So HR, you'd be in the advertising department, you'd be various departments in the company, taking those roles and explaining it. So what currently it is today and what it will look like in the future, and developing curriculum to explain that role to the people as into a new software program. So I did that for Workday. And I did that for Salesforce, if you've heard of those technologies. So we took a lot of the processes that they would do in Workday and automated it, because before then it was not automated. So they had manual staple pages they would scan, put it in the scanner, take it down, send it to someone, then they'd look at it, then they'd send it back. So then Workday, they put it right in the work order, would go straight into the computer. And then they would pass that on to someone else. No scanning required, no binders required, no storage required. So things changed. I worked for a very manual company that has been around for 100 years. They actually had their 100th anniversary 2 years ago. So they were very manual and they resisted like crazy. They didn't want to change in their technology. They wanted things to be manual. And you'll find a lot of companies doing that, that just want very manual processes. And they're afraid of change, but the change made things simpler once they got used to it, and they loved it. And even the management staff, they loved it because it made, they could see reports every morning that they couldn't see before. They could see visuals on how every division is doing that they couldn't see before. So there was so much improvement from this change. Of course, change is hard. If you ask anyone, ask your parents to changing to a new system at work or changing something, it's hard. I think it's the fear more of anything else, the fear of change and what it's going to do to you, how it's going to affect you. That is what everyone is afraid of. But once you get through the change management, you understand the reason, you see the value of what the other side is. And it was, I'm going to say, a very painful process for them to go into Salesforce. They kicked and screamed and they didn't want to go, but they eventually did move into that platform. It was a brilliant platform to move into. It just streamlined their work habits. It made things much simpler. They could see reporting, they could see shortage of staff, they could see all sorts of things right before it was going to happen. So they didn't have those numbers before. They'd start a project and realize, oh, they didn't have the right people and they had to stop the project. Now they can allocate staff when the project first came in and they knew there's not going to be issues. So that was brilliant for them. Then they also did the same thing for Workday. They digitized their HR department, got into that. We did before and after. So found the people it affected, created their learning paths for them to actually go and to learn them. I would travel the world training them on the new system. So did a lot of the lectures in person, walk them through it in smaller groups while I was there, and then supported them when I went back home to Canada via virtual sessions or help tickets, or even something called, like, it's on user. So if you're hovering over any website, a pop-up will pop up, like a little pop-up tool. You'll see that come up. And I developed a whole bunch of workflows with that pop-up tool will say, oh, looks like you need help. I can walk you through this. What are you looking to do? And I would develop those. And we call them walk me's. There's other companies out there, but it's an online pop-up tool. So you're hovering, it jumps up and says, I can guide you through it. What do you need help doing? So I created those as well to help walk them through the processes. And it was actually help them get through it. I solved a lot of tickets that way before they actually became help tickets, because I realized the common questions that were commonly asked in the help tickets, and then I actually created material to go with it. So that's another thing. You've got to look at a different way of actually thinking about your job. So I went around the world, taught. I did a lot of online video conferences, Skype and Teams and Zoom as well, while I was internationally and while I was back home to help them. And then when we were launched, everyone says, oh, it looks pretty good. So then don't stop there. I went to look at the help tickets that the help desk was getting and found that certain topics were common topics that kept coming up. So then I would go to those topics, design courses based on those topics. So actually going back and seeing where the problem was and actually creating support for those help tickets. So they didn't become help tickets. So solving that before, solved about half the help tickets. So they got a lower volume of help tickets because they could go open these micro videos I created of 1 to 2 minutes walking through the process. So I create micro videos so they wouldn't even have to go to the help desk. Okay, we did a lot of soft launches. We did a lot of user testing along the way. I was working with the programming teams while at this company, while we were rolling out Salesforce and Workday, as we tweak different things. I'd sit with them and tell them, what about this? What about this? What about this? And then we tested on small groups. Then we, of course, launched live as well. So new systems gave the management a lot of transparency, which is why a lot of companies bring in new systems. Helps to understand insights as well and forecasting, I told you, for HR requirements or for people working around. So it gave them that forecasting and insights as well. So technology is your friend. Figure out how to use it there. And I used other tools. I used that pop-up windows. I use other tools to help support the technology I was actually doing. So that's Salesforce and Workday. I worked at a company that did that. And that went, I also went one step further. In my travels, I would talk to a lot of VPs in the companies I went to, in Japan and China. So the country heads basically of this company. And one of their biggest issues was not having enough qualified talent to do the work they were doing. So this company was a very specialized team of engineers that would certify projects as safe to use, or products that were safe to use in that country. So if you're using a dishwasher, they would test the wiring, making sure the rubber that goes around the wiring was strong enough. They test every little bit. The plug that you plugged in was safe. For different UV levels as well, different temperatures as well. So they would test every single product. So if you had a phone or any device, they would test every single part of that phone to make sure it was safe to be used in the country you used it in. So you can imagine they had a lot of products they were using. So they didn't have enough qualified staff to even go through and do all that testing of new products. We would be in all the big countries. So we'd be in China, of course, we'd be in Germany for all the car manufacturers were there. We'd be in certain countries, but we didn't have enough people on our end in the company to send out the products and test the products. That was a huge issue for us. So we would take about 18 to 24 months to fully train a qualified engineer to do what they needed to do in our company. So that's a year and a half to 2 years. So it was a long training span. So because of that length of time, we turned away millions of dollars of work because we didn't have qualified engineers. So I saw that problem, and knowing technology, because I remember I told you need to play around with technology, you need to know what's out there. I saw augmented reality in video games back then, a couple of years ago at least, and I saw it used also for business purposes. And I said, why don't we try using this for our training? And I had 2 other men that were there, and they said, oh no, it's not possible. We've been trying it for years. I said, no, but I've seen it somewhere. I've been to trade shows. I've been reading magazines. I saw some articles. I said, no, I think I can do this. So I started a POC, and we actually tested a forklift operator company had done a previous model. So they put on the headsets and they pretended they're driving a forklift, and they had the gears, and they would actually go through and do the commands they needed to do, because that was a dangerous role. So they had to practice before actually getting onto the forklift. So they would go and test it. And we did the similar thing with the same company, but we did it for our particular products. So we simulated a lab with all the different cabinets that were there, all the tools were there. They put on the headset for the very first time and would walk them through the entire process. And then every time would be a little bit less guided. So to the very end one, they would not be guided at all. They could pick up any tool, open any cabinet, put on any tool and use it without any guidance. So it was guided instruction at the very beginning, then less guided, till they're on their own and can actually do it themselves. So all the men I worked with said it was not possible, but I knew it was possible because I had seen it. So that's part of that, being curious to know. You may not be able to do it yourself, but to know it's out there. The technology is there for you to actually use and play with. So the company, I was fortunate enough, happened to work about an hour from my company. So pretty close. We're in the same country, actually, in the same city. So it was very fortunate that worked out really well. But we ended up rolling out this POC. It worked out really well. It was an engineering POC. We tested various equipments in the simulated lab. We ended up building 3 centers around the world, one in Germany, one in China, and one in Canada, to train all the engineers that were waiting to be trained. So from that 18 to 24 months, I told you that time span, we got it down to under 6 months. So huge, and millions of dollars a year of savings of turned away business. So that was a huge thing. They ended up building these multi-million-dollar facilities because they saw the value of saving turned away business, because they built centers in Germany, as I said, in China and in Canada. So we had virtual reality, augmented reality labs in these major cities. So I would say that's a huge win because of technology and just being curious. Anyone can do it, knowing that it's available, what tools are available, what you saw at a trade show, what you read, or what a friend showed you. Just keeping your ears and eyes open is very, very important in technology. And you don't need any special skill to know that was possible. You just have to be able to see it. I didn't know how to program an augmented reality, but I found someone who could do it. So that's very important to make sure you know that it is possible. I worked with two men that said it was not possible. They've been researching for years. And within 3 months of a POC, we actually went forward and actually built it. So you need to know yourself and kind of be confident in yourself. And I'm stubborn that way. I've said, no, for sure it's possible. They were saying, no, it's not possible. So I had to prove them wrong. So I did actually prove them wrong because it was possible. So that became and that put us head over tails above all our competitors, because we are the only company doing this. So we could train within 6 months, don't turn away millions and millions of dollars of business per year. And we had technology that none of our competitors had. So that put us leaps ahead of everyone else. So that's why it's important too. So we use the HoloLens actually, so Microsoft product when I was doing that demonstration, and we used our whole shop happened to be a Microsoft product, not that it matters anyways, but our lab was all Microsoft based. We built these 3 augmented reality labs around the world to go ahead in our technology. Does anyone have any questions? I'll just stop now because I haven't been looking around. Any questions anyone has? No? Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hello. Yeah. So you were a UI UX designer, right?
I studied UI UX. I'm not a full-time designer. I was learning the skill and the rules behind it. Yes.
Yeah. So I had a doubt. Like I'm very much interested in designing, so I just keep imagining designing, but I don't know how to implement it inside a computer. But I myself am also a web developer, so obviously I need a good UI UX knowledge.
Yes.
So I don't pre-design my websites, but I design them while developing the website.
Right.
So
that's all you need to do.
The formal way is you present a design, and then the design gets approved, and then you implement it through your coding skills.
Yes.
So is it a good practice to just go on the development part and design the website without a previously designed UI UX?
I think yes, like as long as you know what you're looking for, because you have the background, you know not to put 20 images in one thing and then tons of text. So you know the certain rules. You don't have to go back and redesign. Redesigning is when it's totally wrong and needs to be fixed. But if you're designing for the new way and following those guidelines, you should be fine. So I design when I'm doing my courses, I'm thinking about the UX, I'm thinking about how they're going to experience this. I don't redesign, I just design from the start, because you have those skills in the back of your head that are guiding you on what to do and what not to do. So it doesn't mean you always have to redevelop the wheel. If you're creating it while you're creating, even when we do our A/B testing, I'm like, what about this? What about this? So we'll test different things, but you can design for it. You don't need to go back and start from scratch, but keep it in your head. Even everyone else should, when you're in any sort of a customer facing tools or products, at least have that knowledge. You don't have to be one like a UX designer, but know the skills, know what you're looking for to be able to do that. I even did a design sprint school, which is very similar. And they said, I created 2 different layouts and saying, why does one work more than the other? So I studied all that just to understand. You don't need to be an expert in the field, just like the augmented reality. I'm not an augmented reality programmer, but I knew enough to be able to go ahead and do it. Right? So you don't have to be professional, but you need to know enough to do it, especially if that's not your field. If UX is your field, then go ahead, of course, be professional and be skilled, have all your degrees, have everything you need. But if that's a supplement to your other skills, it's good to have. Like I have all these other backgrounds, the UX background, I have the augmented reality background. I'm not a UX designer, I'm not an augmented reality programmer, but I know enough to influence my current role because I know enough of the field around me to do what I need to do. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
So you are also a change manager. First of all, Apple, Salesforce, Microsoft, 3 huge tech giants. So I was already mind blown. So you are also a change manager. So technology has evolved a lot. Like for example, if you take my area of interest, that is web development, so that's HTML, CSS, JavaScript, vanilla JavaScript.
Right.
And then from there, the Facebook guys did React, and then now it's even better. So how do you manage the change of the tech stacks, because it's completely a huge change from the basic product? Because small changes and tweaks are fine, because that's change management, version management, and all those things will go into the documentation.
Right.
But the whole tech stack change means a completely new documentation, a completely new user experience, a new product, and basically it means starting from the scratch.
Yes.
So
So what
how
I
do
had to
you
go in,
tackle
I
that?
had to go understand. So like, let's say a person in HR, I'd go sit with them and understand the products they currently use, what their current role looked like. I documented that entire thing and then said, with the new technology, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do, this is what you're going to do. And I created training for that. So if their only job was to input checks and to make sure they match in their current role, scanning and importing, whatever, in your new role, you're going to do this, this, and this. So I'd have to sit with them, really understand the current role, and then describe what it's going to be. That's why I also sat with the engineers and saying, you know, this is not going to work. They do this, this, and that. They're not going to figure this one out. We've got to make it simpler for them. So I sat with the programming teams as well, but I needed to understand a lot of different roles in that organization to be able to say, in the future, this is what it's going to look like for you. So I'd sit with various groups designing. They tell me, this is what we do right now, and this is what this person does, and this is what this person does. So combining all the roles together, figuring out what the process looks like, and then saying, okay, in the new world, I'd go with my programmers, this is what they do, this, and this is what your new program is. So I'd have to convert that into the new vision. And that's why when I trained different departments, different times, because they all had different roles. Right? So not everyone has the same role and needs to know the same things. When I even got into Salesforce, it's like some people input the jobs, they'd have to do 4 or 5 roles. Someone who actually had to do the job had to go do this, 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 and other fields. So I had to know every single role in that organization to understand the change that would be involved. And I had to fight programming on the other end because I say, some things are too complicated, they can't do this, we got to do something else. So I was fortunate enough to work with the programming side as well. I sat in their change meetings every single day, and even their follow-ups, their scrum meetings, to see what was going on and what my people, so it's to me representing the people there, not because the programmers are doing their own thing. I'm representing the people saying, okay, you can't do this, or you can do this, or we can do this only if you do this, because I could see them stressing on the other side because, you know, it's stressful for them, right? So yeah.
So would companies like say Microsoft uses .NET as a base, because .NET is a very strong language and Microsoft uses that. So would companies take a leap to a better language? Say Microsoft finds a completely different and stronger language for their products. So then would Microsoft take a leap from what their roots are to the new language, because to evolve with the technology?
Yeah.
Would the
So
company put in that much expenses?
if they saw the value, yes. So the company I worked with, the one that's on screen now, they had a lot of SAP and HANA stuff. They ended up switching all over eventually to the new system. So if they saw the value, and it was millions and millions of dollars, as you can imagine. So if I don't work in the programming end of Microsoft, but if they saw the value, yes, they would. It wouldn't be like a switch of light. It would take stages. So they would have to start decommissioning certain databases and whatever that they're using and bringing it in somewhere else. So it took us many stages to do that. But if the value is there, yes, they would.
And lastly, 3 huge tech giant companies. So any tips to freshers like us, like how did you begin and how did you conquer all these 3 and you are what you are today?
I'm going to say, and I don't mean to sound egotistical, but you've got to stand out. There's a million applications for every role you're going to see. And I'm lucky they came to me. I've never applied to them. If I was one of the 10,000 applications, I don't know if I'd get through, because they're just looking at things on words on their screening, right? A computer screens first before they see the first 10,000. And then if you even make it to the 1,000 of the interview stage, it's a whole different process. But they came to me every time. So I've actually never even applied. Even for Microsoft, they came to me. So it's just one of those really strange things. I think do what you do that you like doing and do it well so people know. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So even like I've finished this one. So that's the augmented reality I brought in. And then for that one, my dot there is that curiosity dot. And while I was on vacation from this job, Microsoft called me when I was in Portugal and said, would you want to interview with us? I said, oh, but I didn't even apply. So they're saying, yes, we want you to interview. We've seen what you've done over here. So it's not me. So if you stand out enough, they come to you. And I haven't applied for in a long time to jobs, so I'm not the person to ask. But if you're different enough, and I'm going to say curiosity is my biggest strength out of anything, because I'm always curious. I'm always questioning what I see. And even in my current role, I just got promoted actually 2 weeks ago. So now I'm moved up a couple levels with Microsoft because of my curiosity. When I got hired with Microsoft, I'll continue this part. When I got hired with Microsoft, I was one of 150 trainers around the world, and there was only 5 women in what I did. 5. So that's when I first started off. And I was the first non-engineer to be hired. So to me, that's huge. I was like, what do you want me? I'm not an engineer, but they knew I could handle the larger crowds. I go in rooms with 300-400 people at a time, and I go ahead and train. And my engineer friends, they always, everyone on the team, they're like, how did you get here? I'm like, they came to me. I didn't apply for anything. Right. So they're always, I'm going to say, a little bit pissed off because they came to me and they asked me if I wanted to work with them. So, and I was just an unusual hire because I had other experiences that they found out about, I guess. And they wanted to see, I was a technical trainer, but not technical. I'm not an engineer. So I'm going to say an engineer trains different from, let's say, from what I would train. And that's what they were looking for. And they were just testing to see how it would go in Microsoft, how I can manage technical concepts to larger crowds. And that's where they found it did very well. So let me get to, I'll show you the rest of this just so you can see. So I came to Microsoft. This is what I mean now. There's some of my certifications. I ended up speaking of Microsoft Ready. Has anyone heard of Microsoft Ready? It's a 10,000 people conference. I spoke there. Out of all my friends, there was only 3 of us that spoke. I spoke. And then I spoke at Ignite too. There was roughly 20,000 people at Ignite. I spoke there as well. So it's a big deal because they it's to be invited to speak at these conferences, let's say. And I also became course lead of the AZ900, the fundamentals course in Microsoft, the largest course in Microsoft. So I'm actually the course lead of that course. So I'm going to say another little star in my thing because it's unusual. It's unusual for me. So when I started with Microsoft, showing the average pass rate, when I attended courses, the average pass rate was 60 to 70%. Like we would go in to an organization like this one below, say ISM, train that team, and then at the end of the day, they'd write their exam. I was noticing a pass rate of 60 to 70%, which everyone thought was great. But to me, 30 to 40% failed. So think of the other side. If you had a 60% or 70% in your class of passing, the other people are failing. So something's going wrong. So I looked at it the opposite way around. I said, 30 to 40% are failing. What are we doing wrong? Where most of my colleagues were happy with 60, 70%. I said, there's something wrong with what we're doing here. We need to fix what we're doing. So that's where I got my pass rates up to as high as 94% because I changed the curriculum. Just that curiosity part I was telling you about, I'm questioning why they're failing instead of being happy that 70% passed. So it's not a mind-blowing thing, but just think differently. I'm always questioning how come this, how come that, why do we do this? And even the augmented reality, when they said it wasn't possible, but I know it's possible. I saw it. So I'm going to fight those because I know it's possible because I know in my head I've seen it somewhere. So just that kind of thing. So I got my pass rates as high as 94%. So for me, that's a win. That's like another 20 to 30% of people passing. So that was very, very important to me to make sure I'm doing the best for our customers, because if you're leaving that class of mine and you're failing, I'm feeling rotten. I felt terrible when people were failing. So I needed to change that. So just question is part of that questioning thing. So I travel the world. I'd have like ballrooms of people training. Remember, non-engineer me going with these engineers and training. So it was a whole different experience. And I got amazing feedback. So I've got a huge pass rate. I've got a great score rate, but it's not for that. I want you to be excited to be there. I want you to pass. I want you to go home feeling happy. So that's, I just questioned everything I saw. And honestly, that's my strength, is I question everything. Because I'm not your typical engineer. I'm not your typical whatever. I question everything I see. And is that like, and I have my UX background. I've got the simplicity from Apple. I've got the digital technology. I know what's out there because I've been playing around with a lot of different things. So all these things just add up to your background. They're your ammunition that you have behind you that helps you figure out how you're going to solve that current problem. So it's just, I don't know, I just find it's knowing what's out there. So that's technical skilling. Even I went through and looked at remember I told you the feedback from the help desk before? I looked at the feedback from the courses and saw where they're struggling. And a lot of them are having problems with the labs. If you've ever done a Microsoft course, they're having problems with the lab. So my next project was fixing the lab experience. So I went through and changed the entire lab experience in the last couple of months. And anyone who's taken a course now will see a whole different lab experience because I've gone through and changed it because of what I was seeing. So these tools are available to you when you're working. You'll see feedback. You'll see feedback is the biggest gift. And we said in Apple, feedback is a gift. Someone who's honest with you and gives you honest feedback, they're giving you the biggest gift instead of someone tapping you in the back saying, oh, you did wonderfully, even if you did poorly. That feedback is a gift, and that's Apple's motto, feedback is a gift. If you give me honest feedback, you're giving me strength to get better than ignoring my weaknesses. Right? So that we always thought that Apple was very routinely giving feedback, and they considered it a gift because you're concerned enough about me to give me honest feedback. It hurts to get it sometimes, and I'm not going to say it doesn't hurt, but you know what you did wrong. You can't fix it if you don't know what you're doing wrong. So it's very important to give even your colleagues. I give my colleagues feedback all the time. You know, I like this, but maybe we could work on this. And it doesn't have to be harsh. It's just like, maybe let's work on this together. I can help you through it. You want to practice with me? And we practice together. And it has to be this. I work as a team, and you meet anyone. I do group sports because I want to be on that team environment. I don't want to be the one standing out. You want to be in that team, and we support each other. Anytime I join, I said, I'm relying on all of you to help me succeed, because only if you succeed will I succeed. And you can never be the one that's shining out on your own. You're the one that's helping your team, and the whole team succeeds together. So think of feedback as a gift. And honestly, that's the biggest thing I learned from Apple is that feedback. So that's my points there. I started, remember, in advertising. I want simplicity of Apple, learning UX, having that knowledge. I'm not a UX designer by any way, but I know enough to know when it's wrong. And then the curiosity, and I'm going to say honestly, that's my biggest strength, is never taking no for an answer, because I know differently. I've been curious enough to know that that is not right what they say, because I've seen it somewhere. And reading things and seeing videos, and just I saw a video that happened in Germany, and then I found the company in Canada, and just happened to work out because I knew it was possible. And then the technical skilling that I learned with Microsoft, being a non-engineer, they brought me in to test out that market. And it works so well now. They're hiring a lot of non-engineers to do what I did, because my pass rates are higher than the engineers. So something is going wrong, like something's going differently. And also because I changed the way the course is delivered. I deliver more of, I would say like a Tony Robbins. I get mic'd up and I've got a whole video crew behind me when I'm going to present, because it's a show. It's like, you know, you've got to make it fun. Computers can be boring. So you don't want to you take the boring parts, you make it interactive. I have quizzes all the time. I give out prizes. It's a different environment because you want to involve your people. So it's very important that you stay curious, take feedback when you're given it, and thank them for the feedback. The first reaction to always be defensive, but it's not to hurt you. If they're giving you feedback, it's hurting them to give it to you as well. So you take it and say thank you, and then think about it. Then come back and say, you know what? I thought about you said, I totally agree with this, or I don't agree with this. Can we talk about it more? But don't get defensive, because that can hurt too. They won't do it again. But take that feedback and think of feedback as being that gift. So now I just want to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and how it's affected my role in Microsoft. So that's the theme of this event. I traveled a lot. I lived on planes. I was traveling Monday to Friday, came back Friday night, Saturday morning, leave again on Sunday. So I was always in airports. I was in lounges, ate a lot of crappy foods, so burgers and not healthy food, traveled in snow, cold weather, minus 40 degrees Celsius in Canada, and living in a suitcase. So that was my world before COVID. So but that's in-person training, because you being in front of the customer, you're training all sorts of weird hours, traveling at night. Groups of training that I would train, so I'd train large groups just to be in front of them. And I love the group environment. I love being there because I could see the feedback. I can see when they're struggling. I'd go to a lot of different classes, and people would come and hug me after saying, I know, I finally get what you're saying. I've been to this course twice before and I didn't understand enough to take the exam. And then they pass the exam in front of me, and like it's a group hug. You feel so good when you can help, right? It's because you're questioning, you're looking at things differently. So it's a great feeling to have people pass and come up to you and say, you know, thank you. I've done this so many times, I didn't understand until you came and explained a different way. And I'm a very visual learner, so I have a lot of visuals on screen when I train, just to have them up there. So I said, for the people who are visual learners like me, this is what it looks like. So I'll put it up on screen and I'll actually show them what it looks like. So I train differently. I reinforce concepts again. I'll go back. Oh, remember this, and this. So there were steps to that. So I don't only talk about it, I'll put it on screen to explain what I'm talking about. So for the different types of learners. And you also have to be inclusive, make sure everyone learns differently. You're accommodating for all those learning environments. So when we went to COVID, of course, everyone's Zoom calls and Teams calls. So we were a lot online, and that was a lot harder to teach, because like you're here, I see your faces, but it doesn't mean you're going to put your hand up or say something or anything else as well. So it's harder. So I did a lot more quizzes in between. I stopped for jokes. I asked them what they had for break, had for lunch, just to get them involved, to get them talking. And by the end of the week, they're normally comfortable enough to always talk and come off mute and speak away. So it's a different way of training, but we train much more. My largest group in person was, I'm going to say 400. My largest group online is around 700 to 1,000. So you can see we're getting very good at training larger numbers because of technology, good and bad. I don't get to know everyone because of the amount of people in the room, but the numbers are growing. So we're training more and more people. And I'm going to say this, like, I don't think we thought we could do it 2 years ago, though, how we do it so well now, because we have the tools. So it's kind of neat to have the tools available to us. And I can literally work in my pajamas all day if I wanted to. No one would even know. As long as I got my shirt on, I'm good to go. But it's given us the technology to do more. Technology has made it possible. And that's why when I say technology makes everything possible, we couldn't do this without great video, great lighting, great microphones, any of those things. So that's why technology has been a friend to me, and it'll be your friend if you understand it enough. I also had new habits. I was home with my puppy a lot more, played a lot more video games. I could wake up later, not traveling anymore, ate a lot of better food because I'm cooking it myself. So that was COVID for me. I was home a lot. I was never like, I was gone Monday to Friday, basically every single week for a year. So this made me more home. I was home. I socialized more. I was playing more video games, playing more games with the kids. It's just a different environment. Changed my whole attitude. And I also had a better time real allocation, the time I'd spend at the airports and traveling. In 1 year, my first year, I had 2 certifications. And then in this COVID year, I ended up getting a total of 7. So I did a lot more studying because I had that free time. So I did a lot of my other certifications too. So I went from 2 to 7 in the that 1 year because I had more time. So you all that extra time you're saving, use it for something else. And as I just mentioned, I just got promoted to another department in Microsoft. So now I'm developing courseware for the advanced support engineers. So someone from zero training in Microsoft 2 years ago, I'm training the advanced support engineers. So to me, that's a big win. My boss was totally floored when I got the job offer for this because it's just because of my learning style and my training style and the way of thinking differently, my augmented reality experience. Even the augmented reality, out of the 150 engineers, no one has done augmented reality. No one has worked at Apple. No one has worked at Salesforce. So there's all these things that I'm going to say I don't have, that I have that they don't have. And that's why I'm here, because I'm different. So even for you, you don't have to do the same path as everyone else. Just think differently. Be curious. Like, I'm not an augmented reality programmer by any sort, but I know what it can do. And I'm not a UX designer full-fledged. I took the courses, I did all that, but I haven't done since then. But I know enough to save myself, let's say. And I know enough of the other technologies to be at least, to know what's out there. And I'm always reading new things. And that's your strength, is equipping yourself with the knowledge to be able to add more of a background and to stand out. So I told you, like, I didn't apply for Apple. I didn't apply for Microsoft. They came to me just because of the variance of background that I have. Any more questions?
Yeah.
You have a question in the chat box.
Oh, okay, I have to find it. Hold on.
Okay.
I can read it out for you.
Could you? Yeah, I can't see it here. I'm new to Zoom.
Yeah, that's with Elena, who wishes to ask that, did you ever struggle with confidence? And if you did, how did you overcome? Because clearly you have achieved a lot.
That's a great question. We call it imposter syndrome. I don't know if you've heard of that term before, but when you start something already new, you don't think you're good enough. And the first thing our trainer trained us in Microsoft when I came in, and I was with all these engineers, and I said, I feel like I should not be here. She goes, that's imposter syndrome. Just get over that, because you're here because they chose you to be here. So yes, I do feel it. You can't let it show, because think about, they called you for a reason. You're just not by accident. They hired you just because they picked your name out of a hat. You're there for a reason. So everyone has it. I get a lot of people that still have it. I'm still trying to get over it, because I still feel like, there's all these engineers around me. They have all these degrees and I don't know any of that stuff, but I'm here for a reason. I'm not just an accidental hire that they happen to have. And when I joined my new team, I showed them my background. They're like, I can't even believe that you're here. Like, you should be somewhere else. Like, just the background I have, none of them have anything close. So I think we always think of ourselves as not worthy or not good enough. You just pretend, fake it till you make it, that kind of role, because you're there for a reason. You weren't hired by accident. So I think just be strong enough to ignore the thoughts in your head and just continue on.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
So before all the bells of success started ringing, like before all the companies and all those things, how would you tackle lack of success coming your way? Like always you keep trying to achieve something, you put in all the hard work, you put in all the time you need, and still you don't get that one opportunity. You see people who are getting opportunities who are less talented than you. Obviously you can tell the skills of people, so you know that they are less talented than you, you know that you deserve it, but still because of some few reasons you don't get the opportunity to be there. And how do you tackle that?
How do you keep your motivation high, basically?
Yeah, so I'm going to say, I think first of all, that standing out feature, there can be 1,000 people graduating with you in the same class and you're all the same. What makes you different? And I've always been, even when I was in advertising way back, PowerPoint was newbie then, and people didn't even know PowerPoint. So I studied PowerPoint. I became an expert in PowerPoint, and I got into some of these companies where I was a PowerPoint expert doing presentations that were top secret presentations. And we'd go into rooms where they had no phones, so you couldn't communicate outward because it was that top secret. So weird things like that. Look at what's going on around and see where the deficiencies are of people available to do certain things and get good at those. It sounds crazy, but like when I'm thinking back now, PowerPoint, really? But no one knew it back then when I was first started off. I became a PowerPoint expert. I got hired. I was getting paid a ton of money way back to do PowerPoint presentations. And now they think they're so basic, but no one knew it back then. So look at the technology that's out there and figure out how you can make your mark. So I got hired just for PowerPoint at the time. And I thought, of all things, PowerPoint, but it made me a ton of money. And it also separated because we brought me into the corporate. When I started art and advertising, I was an artist, and artists don't do PowerPoint. So it's like just a weird, like, you're going to do PowerPoint, but I'm making a ton of money. And when I graduated, 2 of us had jobs graduating. I worked in advertising while I was in school, and then I graduated with a job. Everyone else didn't have a job because I did those things along the way. And it may seem to other people were looking at it saying, why would you want to do that? Or people, like, I did a lot of evening and weekend work. A lot of people turned that away, but it got me projects I would never have gotten otherwise. Because some people said, no, I'm never going to work evenings. I'm never going to work weekends. I said, I'll do it for that kind of money. I will do it. And I got into creating magazines and things that other people, they're like, how did you get it? I'm like, oh, I don't know. They just offered it to me because I was there. I was at the table. I didn't turn down that work. So I'm going to say hard work is a part of it, but being curious and knowing, like, I see deficiencies in certain jobs right now. I'm like, why aren't people studying that? Like, I'm doing the data Power BI, where understanding data manipulation. There's such a field there that people aren't really getting into. It's still so little people are qualified for it. That's a huge field that people are not qualifying for, and everyone needs that. Most companies don't know what their numbers look like. If you can just do that and go in and say, I can go do this for you. It's only going to cost you whatever, $50, whatever, to do a report, whatever, something simple like that. You're in their door and they know, hey, when I call him on, I know he can do this for me. And then he refers me to his friends. And it just goes from there. Finding those niches where there's things missing in the world. And there's so much of that out there. I'm like, why isn't this done? Why are people doing this? And I meet all my nephews and nieces and stuff. And we're saying, why aren't you studying this? There's such a lack of people in this field. And they're like, oh yeah, I know all my friends are doing this. Like, you don't want to do what your friends are doing. You want to do something different, right? My son works at Facebook. He's a product manager, like graduated, got a pre-offer before graduating, like a year in advance, because he stood out. He had Startup Canada in Canada. He's the first youth conference in Canada. He did conferences on the school board. He was all these things at the age of 16 and 17. He's just totally unusual than anyone else you meet. And that's why they liked him. He had 10,000 people apply for the role, 1,000 were interviewed, and they gave the job to 10 people. So can you imagine? He wasn't, and when people saw him in the interview, what are you doing here? You're not even qualified. He got that thing, what are you doing? Like, same thing I got here, what are you doing here? How did you get this job? He has such an unusual background. That's what they wanted. Unless you're amazing and you can be heads over tails over all the other programs or whatever that is, who are identical to each other, you've got to think differently. And I think it's the thinking differently that got me where I am, because I don't do what everyone else does. I'm not a straight engineer. I'm not a straight trainer. I've got my finger in all these other different pots. So it's thinking differently is what I'm going to say, and being curious, knowing what's missing in the fields out there so you can go in and be that specialist. Even it sounds silly, like my art friends who graduated with me, oh, they would never do PowerPoint, they'd never do this. Guess where it got me? They're still like a lot of times they're calling me looking for work. So so it's one of those things that I can't even explain. Like there's nothing, like I'm not special that way. I'm curious. And I will do things that other people won't do because, oh, they don't want to do this project, they don't want to do that project, but it's led to something bigger. You have to think of where it's going to take you. Even at those reports you demand, if you go do reports for someone, they'll tell their friends and their companies, all of a sudden you're too busy and you're turning away work. So that's where it is, just making yourself different, because unless you're superior to all the other people in the same field as you, you're not going to get through in just merits. It's what separates you. And that's for me, my son from Facebook, my son from Palantir, they are just different people. My other son had a startup at the age of 21. He got a couple $1 million of funding, dropped out of pharmacy school and pursued his company. So they're just different kids. And people say, oh, it's so easy to do. It's just being different from all the way from a kid. Like they were just always different. So I don't know. Does that
I agree, because right now companies don't require degrees, right? Many companies don't ask for degrees or where you have studied from or what you've done. They just see what skills you have and they recruit you. So yeah.
Right. So make that list long. Make that list long. Make it totally varied. So varied. Like I have so many different backgrounds. They're like, okay, what do we need from here? Some people can say it's not focused, but you've got so many skill sets that they don't rely on the one. Unless you're superior in that one. I'm going to say very many people are not that superior in just the one.
I also have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So since you've worked in different companies in the design field, so I wanted to know what was common that they required with the designs. What was common?
Most of us had some sort of design or degree in design. And most people were traditional designers. They can draw layout. They can move around text. They edit text. But I took it further where I'm a video editor, photo editor. I know how to retouch photos. I did all that myself, and a lot of them didn't know how to do that at the time of.
No, so in different companies, why, my question is that what was common in the designs of that you worked on in different companies? Like, why do they need a particular designer? Why can't the person who is developing the code do so? Like I am also interested in designing, but I had this question that, okay, if I'm able to code and I'm able to design, so I can be a programmer and a designer. Why do we need specialists in designing? Like I had something in mind, like for example, not everybody knows that, okay, pastel colors will attract kids more, and if you need more of information and less of convincing, then you need not so bright colors. Dull colors will do. And if you need convincing in the same information, then you need convincing in the colors of the design too. So this can be one aspect. So similarly, why do companies need specialists in design?
Now, have you done traditional UX design studying? Like, have you studied design?
Like I have, no. I did web development, but I don't really know that if I did any designing or not, because of I made a game, a little game, Tower of Hanoi. It's actually already made, but I just made it again. But I was praised for the design and for the colors I used, and because it was more attractive and people would love to come and play it, even though it's kind of boring to many. So that's why I got interested. Oh, why were they so happy with my work and not with the work of a person who has an experience of 20 years? So at that point, I questioned why exactly do they need specialists in designing?
So I'm going to say designing, there's many levels. We have mathematicians also. When we're looking at images, we have psychologists behind the whole process in Microsoft. When we look at, so it's not just a designer or a team of designers, we go into the psychology behind it as well. So it can be a large field, not just layouts, A/B layouts and testing different things. It's the psychology of certain things as well. When we did even to design a course, there's like 300 people behind every course you see. So you can think of the level of complexity of the writing, the designing, and we have a lot of accessibility features we added too. So it's not just one element; it's multiple layers. We have psychologists in our divisions as well, looking at everything and seeing how people react to things. And so it's not as simple as knowing a little enough design. It's a whole field.
Yes. Okay. Okay. I got it.
So you need to get, if you're going to specialize, like your program, and if you want to specialize, you need to do a lot more research on the UX part. For me, I just need to know enough to know what's good and what's bad. And then we have other people looking at it as well. But think of every course we offer, there's 300 people behind a course. So you know, there's like a ton of people looking at everything that's happening in those courses.
Yes.
Okay, so more study on the UX part if you want to get stronger on that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it's a whole field, and it's a field for a reason. There's so much psychology behind everything you see.
Yeah.
I have one last question.
Yes, go ahead.
I've been, as I told, I've been developing and designing for quite a while, and I didn't meet anyone. Like I always thought that I am the best at what I do at my level, like inside within the people I know. So I saw your work and your experience today, and I thought you're really good, and I have a lot of area for improvement, room for improvement. So uh, would you mind if I reach you on LinkedIn and I share I'll share one of my designs, just one of my designs, and I just want a feedback so I'll know where I want to improve, because obviously I'm looking for constructive criticism, because that always helps me to improve more. So if you wouldn't mind, I'll just
I'll put my contact details on screen. It's actually in the long screen. I'll put it, well, it's here. You can scan it here. That's my LinkedIn.
I'll copy that in the chat for you. Just before we move ahead, Loraine, I'm conscious of the time. Yes. We are above time. We don't have anything planned, so we are happy to stick around if you have time. I'm sure.
Yes, I can stick around.
Some more questions, because people are really liking this and it's quite interactive.
Yeah, for sure. So that's my contact detail. I just wanted to show you one thing. As you get older, you guys are young, but I find they're talking about women's secret power, and how we are more empathetic. We care more. So when I came in, I said, the 60 to 70% pass rate versus the 90%, that's a secret power for women. We care about these things. So use that strength, use what you know, go ahead and push yourself, stand out, be different. Remember, I didn't apply for these roles. They came to me. So that tells me enough. And back then my LinkedIn was terrible. I didn't even think anything of LinkedIn. So I'm surprised they even found me. But make yourself different somehow. Make yourself different. Be curious is my strongest thing, because curiosity is what got me everywhere I'm going. Like I was in an Apple sponsored group when I was in high school, university, and there was not even Apple computers in North America at the time. So that's where I was way back. And it was that curiosity. And I was literally the only one that knew computers when I went anywhere, any company back then. I know it's dating myself, but then always being curious because I knew what was there. So that's my only strength. And then take feedback. If someone is giving you feedback, it's because they're concerned about you. If it's a mean feedback, that's different. But normally in Apple, our biggest strength is feedback, because then you can only get better if someone tells you what you need to fix or change or look at. Because even I take public speaking classes just to get better. I'm always trying to get better. I'm writing a book now to get better. So there's all these things I'm adding to my workload, because I'm never the best at my game. I'm never going to be better than anyone else out there. I've got to make myself different, and I've got to stand out. So I'm always improving. I'm creating a website right now that trains a lot of concepts I train into little snippets. I'm writing a book, and I volunteer at a lot of events like this one as well. And that too, when you succeed, and you will all succeed, remember to give back. It is so important to help other people, because I didn't get here on my own. I relied on other people, and give back wherever you can. I volunteer for a lot. I teach a lot of other events just to help out, because I couldn't have got here without the help of other people. And as I say, I always rely on a team. And when I start with a team, I'm looking at you to help me get better. It's not about you and standing out by you. By you helping your team, you will automatically stand out. Okay, so it's not about you, it's about your team and your environment. I just joined, I said, as a new team, and I said, I'm looking at every single one of you because you're going to make me a better person. You're going to help me get to something and help me, because now they volunteer to teach me things like DevOps and things which I'm not strong on. They're teaching me just for the fun of it, and I'm teaching them for the fun of it because we want to help each other. It's giving your hand to someone else and helping them up as well. So that's why I think it's important to give back. And there's my thing there, contact details. But yeah, so make yourself different, be curious, because technology has leveled the field for everyone. Everyone has a computer and everyone has internet now. There should be no excuse to not get better in technology. And technology, anyone can do, right? So everyone has access to technology. Make it your friend, stand out, be better. If you want to specialize in something, be really good at it. And always be curious. That's all I have on that one. Any other questions?
Yes, I have one.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I also.
Like
Yes, go
cloud
ahead.
computing is something very different from doing something creative. So how you get into that very technical thing?
So cloud computing is just basically taking all the skills you would have on your computers or at work and putting it into the cloud. So I went from 0 to where I am in 2 years, from just, learning at a course and then looking at it from the student's point of view. What are they struggling? What are they not understanding? And even I put myself as a student, when I take classes, even online in Microsoft, I'm taking notes and editing to send the editing stuff because I notice errors and things along the way they can fix. So I'm always looking at it, how I can fix it when I'm looking at it. So cloud computing is basically using the skills and the tools of other companies in the cloud. That's what cloud technology is. So you don't have to have a server, you don't have to have your own data center. You're using the cloud data center at Microsoft or Google or whatever that happens to be. So just a different way of looking at it. If you worked in-house at any company, they would normally have it there. Now in the cloud, they have it elsewhere. So that's the only difference. And just learning the terminology difference is by company to company, it's all different. But yeah, it's a lot easier, I would say, especially easier, cheaper for the companies for sure. And if you're joining my workshop, I'll be showing you how cloud technology works. So we'll go through all that and how cloud technology works, what you can use, what you can sign up for, the basic costing, very simple costing. So it's a great tool and it's easy enough to learn. Like I went from 0 literally to 7 certifications in 2 years.
I have started with that Azure fundamental course, and I am studying it from 1 month. So I just gave the exam day after yesterday, like on Thursday, and I just secured 653. So what advice would you give to me?
Did you play around with any of the labs? Did you go into the labs?
I went through entire documentation.
Okay, so we have GitHub labs. If you go look up Azure Fundamentals GitHub, we have labs you can actually do. It'll help cement the knowledge because you're actually going to create it yourself. So you can open up a free account in Azure and play around in the labs. So for me, it's practice. I always go do the labs because then I know what I clicked on because I did it. It's not what I remember what I wrote and I read. I actually went and did it. So go play around the labs. The labs will make it, you'll pass no problem next time with the labs.
Actually, even I took the Azure 100 beginners course.
Yes.
But it's very difficult for me to, excuse me, it's very difficult for me to understand something without practically doing it.
Exactly.
So at that time, I didn't have any idea that there was something called GitHub Labs. I came to know about it today when you mentioned it.
Yeah.
So I just paused the course because I was not able to understand what's happening. It was all theory on the screen.
Yes.
And it wasn't getting into my mind because something visual gets into the user's mind very easily.
See, I'm the same way. I'm a very visual learner. That's why I always put it on screen. Because then I said, for the people who want to see it visually, step 1, step 2, step 3 look like this. So did you, how are you taking your courses? Through Microsoft Learn?
Yeah, through Microsoft Learn.
Okay, so they have labs built in a lot of the sections now. Have you noticed?
No, I've not checked it after that, like from the past 6 months. I did 7 months ago.
They just recently changed it. In the last 2 to 3 months, they've now put labs right in the course. So it says, go to here now and go do this lab and come back. So they'll send you away to do the lab and come back. So go back to Microsoft Learn. You'll see a lot of the courses now have labs in it because the benefit of the labs.
Because that's when I realized that eidetic memory is really a thing because visual power is everything I have. Yeah.
For sure. I'm that way too. I have to go play around with it. Even when someone's describing to me, I have to visualize and even draw it out myself. Then I understand what they're talking about. So go do the labs, Lakshmi. Okay.
Even I met Loraine as well, like in the Azure Fundamentals course that Microsoft launched a few days back. So yeah, I have also scheduled my exam, like like in a month, like on around 2nd or 3rd of August, so that I'm having a month-long time to just learn more about it and practice more on it, so that I'll for surely pass the exam.
Now, are you paying for your exams?
No, I got it for free from the Microsoft certification.
Good, good. You're paying for your exam too? No, right? Lakshmi, are you paying for yours?
No, I attended that learning training program from you.
Okay, good, good. Okay, yeah.
I
So
had to pay actually.
Hmm?
I had to pay 6 months ago, but since I was not able to grasp the knowledge properly, so I didn't go for the test. So I'll go for the test now, maybe in the next.
So now sign up the same what Arth did. Sign up for that same link. Attend the 2 virtual sessions, and then you'll get your free course, a free certificate to write that exam.
I'll get the details from Arth.
Yes. Yeah. So I'll share it later on. They can post it. So we have a whole bunch of free courses you can take, and then you take the course and the exam is free. So it's a big deal.
I have a question, like here, if you have time.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned that like opportunities will come to your way, like if you are exceptional. So, like for people who are not actually that much exceptional, like you, and you're there. So
I'm not saying I'm exceptional. I'm not exceptional. I honestly, I work hard. I'll try out anything. I'll test things. I'm always playing around, just because you never know where the opportunity takes you, right? Volunteer for things, like do all sorts of things to get yourself noticed. I know it's very competitive where you are, but I did a lot of volunteer, and just your name gets out there. Or do things for like really ridiculously cheap, and then they know who you are, and they know who to call for certain things. You become the specialist in, what do you specialize in, Arth? What is your
currently I'm learning data analysis. Like I'm doing it self-learning, and I, like, from the past 2 years I was not into computing and technical stuff, and I was only practicing entrepreneurship. So like this was very hard to like I am pursuing my computer science engineering, but still I like didn't touch the technological part since 2 years. So that was a very difficult decision for me to just again shift it onto the technical things. And I'm currently started learning Python and recently working on cloud as well. That like in future, for someday I'll be working with the big data, and I'll be needing some cloud fundamental things as well. So I have thought of like I should took this channel for me.
Yeah, data, data is the new gold, they say, right? So data is the new gold. Data, anything is in the right field. We cannot find enough data people anywhere because there's so much to be done. And it's so new for so many companies. Now, I'm going to say, when I talk about PowerPoint in the day, data right now and analyzing data is the big thing now. So if you can get into Power BI, get into data. I just finished the data DP 100 course, the advanced data course. That's where you need to be. And with Python, when I was bored one day at Apple, I decided to take a Python course. Python came in handy now when I did my data course. So it's weird where things take you. I said, what language am I going to learn? So I said, I'll take Python. And then I used it for my data course. So data is the big goal right now. And if that's your field, go ahead, push yourself, because it's still, people are still learning. You don't want to wait till everyone else has already learned it. They're still ramping up. Be ahead of them.
Okay, so like you like this was like this was discussed before in this conference as well, that and nowadays companies are not looking for the degrees or the big certificates that you are having. They're actually looking for the skills. But when we apply for a lot of opportunities, everyone we do not get a reply from them. It's just you are just submitting our application. So like, what are your suggestions that how to actually find these opportunities and to like get inculcated with these organizations?
So like I
if
said,
I take an example of Microsoft.
Yes, like I said, when you apply for a job, 10,000 people applying with you. So unless you can beat all 10,000, you have to be differentiated. So go to other companies, go attend conferences, go to volunteer things, go at startup weekends, go at hackathons, go to all these places where companies are out looking for people. Like a lot of these startups, they're sponsored by companies because they're looking for people. And if you're successful there, they will call you. Volunteer for things. Say, hey, you're a small organization. I want to show you how to do your data or visualize your data, or go to companies saying, like, I get emails all the time, people wanting to do my logos, do my website, do all these other things. So go to companies and say, I see you've got this. Do you need someone to do your data? I can do it for an introductory charge of whatever, $50 or whatever it is. Just get in the door. And then now you're all of a sudden you're a data visualizer for this company and this company and this company. So you've got something now in your resume that you didn't have before. Because unless, like my son applied with 10,000 other people at Facebook, unless you stand out, you're not going to make that 10,000 to 1,000 cut on paper. Yeah. But if you have all these other things that make you different, like he had ran startups, he was a student trustee on the school board, the largest school board in the world. So he was all on the other things that just made him different. He was not your usual student getting 95%. He was something different, right? Just by various opportunities. Go to these events, go to the startup weekends, attend all these. There's not enough people for half these events. We have, Microsoft also have all sorts of hackathons and attend those things. People are looking for people there. So be in the places where people are looking, not just sending in your resume. I never send my resume because I can't compete with those people. I can't compete with 10,000 people in the same role. I don't think I'm different enough. Do you know what I mean? So it's just, and they come to you when they see you're good. So go out to put yourself out there into other roles, volunteer a lot, help a lot, and your name gets out there. That's the only way to compete these days.
I think that's a really good tip. And I think the overall the session was very informative. I particularly like the slide about giving back. And I really thank you to you for putting GirlScript Ireland as the logo of this conference particularly.
I was also seeing that. That was so amazing.
I added an interview.
This shows on how humble a person can be.
Oh, well, I'm proud to be here. And I also have a donation coming. It'll be coming in the next week or so for you guys.
That's really sweet of you. But I think all of us have had some takeaway from this. Either it might be very technical, like the GitHub Labs or the free subscription of exams, or just your LinkedIn ID to build connections in Canada and Toronto. So, well, I mean, I've recorded everything and I'm really happy you were on board with us. We still have a few minutes since Loraine is available. If anyone has any questions, feel free to unmute and speak about it. Okay.
Okay, so I'll ask another thing. So there are a lot of engineers, like especially in India, there are like hundreds of colleges for engineering, hundreds of colleges.
I know.
And every college has like around 1,000 of engineers graduating every year. So standing out is a very difficult thing in India right now. And almost everyone, especially because of the pandemic, I'm very grateful for the pandemic to happen. I know it's weird to say, but it pushed me to my limits and I learned a lot of new things. I developed my skills. But still, there are people who have the same skill set, who are at the same level. There are a lot of people who are at the same level. Everyone's trying to stand out and everyone's growing. But as you said, displaying ourselves, making ourselves visible in the eyes of the recruiters is important. So like on LinkedIn, we do that. And still we, as Arth told, we don't get any replies. And we apply on websites of the companies and we still don't get any follow backs or follow throughs. So is there any alternative way? Because it's a really huge struggle, especially in India. Maybe outside India, there's a little less struggle. But here, because of the population of engineers, it's really difficult to make things happen. So
remind me what you're specializing in.
Web development, but that's not my only domain. I do designing as well. Not the proper UI designing, but I do graphic designing. And I do competitive programming also. Like I program in Java.
Okay. So I'm going to say, I know it's extremely competitive over there. Even jobs here will get 10,000, 20,000 applications for the same job. So it's, remember, unless you're superior in everything you do, you have to differentiate. So how, Aman, are you different from everyone else who's applying? Right? So you've got to think of what makes you different enough that you stand out. So like I'm writing a book. I'm doing a website right now. I'm doing tutorial videos as well, because I can say most of my trainer friends probably don't have all of those. So I'm still trying to set myself out to make myself different. So you've got to constantly, because everyone's catching up, right? So you've got to constantly be moving forward to get yourself standing out. Even this, I just moved to a new role too, where it's basically ahead of, above the trainers now. I'm developing content that the trainers will use, and it's the advanced trainer, so a different level, but it's just standing out enough because I've done so many other things, not only Microsoft, that they want that skill. So what skill are they going to hire you for that you have that is different from the other 10,000 people applying? I know it's tough, and I felt it at first. And when I first started, I remember I was saying connecting the dots. You can only now understand all those dots. But in advertising, what am I doing? Like everyone else is doing this too. But then I found my niche where I can be different. And then for Arth now with the technology, we're saying data is such a big thing now. Specialize in data. There's not enough data people out there. And then volunteer, go to these hackathons, go to all these things and stand out. That's your chance to show. That's what those things are for. They're not just for, you know, to entertain people. They're trying to figure out who's really good in the room. That's why they have those things. And Microsoft has, I'm going to say 2 to 3 a year of these hackathons, and they're looking for people. That's your way of getting in. Other companies do it as well for different purposes. Even these environmental ones, they're all looking for the exceptional people in the room. I go to a lot of, you know, have you heard of University of Toronto school? I go to their MBA programs, their finalist competitions, to see unusual people, to see what they're working on, to see what I can pull out of that for my own health, do I know what's going on in the world? Because these are the best are applying, and the top 10 get picked to present. I always go to the finalists every year to see what's going on, just for the curiosity, for my ammunition in my back pocket, so I know what's happening in the world. So arm yourself with enough knowledge, arm yourself with being different enough that they say, hey, but he's got this, maybe we should look at this because no one else has that. When I was hired, I didn't have that engineer background. They're looking at Workday, Salesforce, Apple, technical, design, UX. They're looking at all these other things. I'm going to say that all those combinations are quite rare for any of the people I know, right? So make yourself different.
Something on the similar lines was, as a background, I did my master's in Ireland, and I've been working in SAP for last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point in my career, you know, I have a lot of mentees and onboarding tasks, and a lot of people I am a buddy for when they're in the initial states. And I did my engineering in India as well, so I completely understand what they are speaking. However, I choose my way around it by doing a specialization in the things I like. But what I get is, like, you know, how you said, to increase your exposure and try to volunteer for things or do internships and for a cheaper cost. So the recent questions which people have asked me, like the upcoming students have asked in their second and third year, and it's really got me thinking, is that in India, or mostly around the world, there is a concept of unpaid internships, which in the Western culture is really disregarded about. No matter your experience, you are still spending your time and efforts. So you should never do something for free. It can be for a minimal amount, which is nothing to the company, but you should always charge yourself. On the other side of it, as you know, because especially in population dense countries, experience and your exposure is of much value than the monetary benefit you get. So what is your take on this? Like,
I've done a lot of unpaid internships. I've had friends who are writing books. I volunteered just to help them do the layouts, do all that stuff. It's part of the learning. I learned how to publish a book because I helped him. So I got something out of it myself. I don't agree with unpaid internship, but I've done a lot of things where literally I'm getting $2 an hour because I wanted the experience. I know what I'd get from there more than what they're getting from me. So even if advertising, a lot of people worked at internships when we were graduating, the experience they got out of it was way better than the pay. It's that experience of where it's going to take you. I did tons of volunteering. I do, and I still do. And back in the day, I did a lot of free work because I wanted the experience. What are you going to teach me? Right? So what is that company going to teach you? What exposure are they going to give you that you're not going to get on your own at home? And I totally understand the not pay thing. Go on, what are these, Upworks and Fiverr? Offer your services there too. You'll get experience for maybe a lower cost, but you'll get that experience. And guess what? Your name will get out there. You will get better naturally from doing those. But I do not agree on the unpaid work. And we do have unpaid here too. Workshops. When we went out, I was in school, there was a lot of unpaid. I did a lot of projects where I never got paid for, but I realized I'm going to get something out of it too. Yeah. Not only are they going to get something out, I'm going to make sure I benefited from being there.
I think who was I cutting? Sorry, Aman.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, yeah, no, I was just finishing the earlier question I asked. I think that's the same advice I give to people I am mentoring on. But, you know, like, I think the question really arises when you are working 12 or 15 hours for something and you're not getting paid, but you're only getting exposure. But then the question I ask them is, and this is for everyone in the participation, is that you are spending your 15 hours. Maybe if you spend your 8 hours and you spend 2 hours on yourself working on something, like it should be something you really enjoy rather than you just counting the monetary benefit of
it. So even if you're doing that free, what are you benefiting from? And maybe cut it. Say I can only do 8 hours or whatever. I can only do 5 hours a day, whatever, because I need to take some other time to build my own stuff. Exactly. But you being in, say, your advertising company, being in there, you've got to be learning something from being there. It's not just you being there for free. You're learning all sorts of processes you would never have seen before. So you are benefiting as well. That's why they call it unpaid, because you are also learning. And I know hiring on the other end, sometimes hiring, you don't see the value of the person right away. They build it over time and then they become invaluable. Maybe you'll get full-time work because they now see how much you brought in and how valuable that is. So if it's not working, if you're doing this for weeks and weeks and months and months and you're still not getting money, pack your bags, but you've got to have learned something from being there.
Yeah, go for the exposure, but have
that's it. Go for the exposure, really.
Yeah, like I've been doing an internship. It is unpaid. They're not paying me anything, but I'm doing this just because I'm interested in web development. And I think that working with a team will give me an exposure, because I've never worked in a corporate environment where people are giving you orders and you're completing and you're meeting the deadlines. So I took on the internship, and I wanted to ask you, is it worth it to be an intern in a startup that is not actually registered as a startup, but they are going to register themselves? So they got a product developed. I developed a website for them, and now they tell me that it's going to be registered soon, and then we'll give you the certificate. So I didn't get anything out of it, but still, was it worth it? Because I'm not able to decide.
There? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I'm still.
You're on the ground floor. You know how many people would pay to be on the ground floor? That's the best place to be. And to start up before they go IPO, before they go public and register, that is extremely rare. Here in North America, everyone is trying to do that. So
it is an American startup.
Yeah, it's invaluable that. And imagine if you left and then they went IPO and they all made millions and you were gone. Exactly. So you think of it that way. Both of my kids have been in startups. One of my kids actually, they IPO'd and he's done very well, let's say, because he was on the ground floor. So that's what everyone here is looking to be, on the ground floor. Anyone in North America is trying to join a startup, that's be pre-IPO. And if you're already there, don't ever leave. Don't leave, because you'll be turning away millions and millions of dollars. Yeah, so if you can get into these things, everyone here is trying to do those things to help out, to be on the ground floor, because that's where you're going to make not only the money, but you're learning, because it's a small company, you do everything. I found working in smaller companies are so valuable because you're doing a little of everything. There's no defined role for you. You're not saying, oh, I only have to do this, this, and this. You can do everything that comes your way because you learn everything. So and it's a silly thing. When I used to work in advertising, I used to learn how to pull apart the photocopy machine and put it back together. Because that photocopy machine and I work together till this project gets through. So if it gets broken down, I got to fix it. So I made sure I knew everything around me in case anything ever happened. So it wouldn't stop where I needed to be. So, you have to be able to fix things, because that's part of you. You can't wait for the IT guy to come, or in 2 to 3 days. If that's how your project's going to come out and it breaks down, you're fixing that machine yourself. So I always had made friends with the machines because I needed them.
I agree totally, because I had to learn a mobile application development because they wanted someone to develop a mobile app, and I had no experience in it. I learned it from scratch. I developed a prototype for them and they liked it, and yeah.
So guess who they're going to call to do it next time?
Hope
right?
so.
That's what I mean. So all these little skills that you develop along the way, you never say you can't do it. Go figure out how to do it. With the technology now and all the videos on there, there's no excuse anymore. Before, when there was no manuals, you had to go buy something and you couldn't afford it, whatever. Yes, now there's no excuse. And you make the time. And literally, when my friends are going out to dinner and drinks and whatever, I work on all these other projects, and it took me far further than they ever got. And my friends, all of my friends are like, how did you get to Microsoft? I'm like, I don't know, they call me. Because I always had something else going on. They call it a side hustle in North America. I don't know if they call it here. I always had a side hustle, because you don't know when one is going to end and when something's else is going to come up, right? So your side hustles will be your biggest benefit in the end. So what you enjoy doing is what people will know you for. That's what you're willing to do for free, but you'll end up being paid for. So yeah, those are important. I don't know. Like even now, I don't see myself like successful. I always feel like, that imposter syndrome that we talked about. That's why I'm trying to write a book. I've got a website coming. I've got something else going in the same part, because I always have to keep going, because you never know.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Sometimes the exposure and the certificates you get to build your profile are of much more value than what you think.
Yeah, and I took them just for the knowledge. I didn't take them because I want to be an engineer. I wanted to understand how it all worked. It's just so I can, when I go further, I understand the background. I may not be proficient in AI development, but I know enough to be dangerous and I know what's available. So for me, it's always being able to predict what I can do project-wise, because now I'll be developing a lot of projects and products because I know what I can do. So it's just, I don't have to be an engineer or superior in it, because that's not my field. I just have to dabble in each one of those so I understand.
Correct. I understand, and I really appreciate that we have gone past 30 minutes.
That's okay. I'm ready. Whenever you're ready, we're good to go. Anyone else have any questions?
I think I'm done. I just wanted to remind you that I sent my design on your LinkedIn, so please give it a look.
Okay, so I'll give you honest feedback. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Honest, yeah.
So remember,
Completely.
if you one thing you remember, feedback is a gift.
Yeah.
So I tell everyone, people give me feedback, don't react if it's negative at first. Think about it, because they're going out there and telling you why you need to fix something, and you only get better from improving what you do.
Yeah, and what I've learned while judging others' design is that I don't look for the good things in the design. I always look for mistakes, so that helps me improve better.
Yeah, it improves for yourself. Yeah, so you have to look at both, because of course there's a lot of good in them too, but you've got to learn from the mistakes. Great. Well, my contact details there, and feel free to reach out. And thanks for having me.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, Loraine. You were really informative. Guys, we are closing the session if anyone doesn't have any further questions. I think we just posted Loraine's LinkedIn as well. Feel free to connect and ask her if anything is left out. I'll just stop the recording right now.